Bhagavane, Nirisa Nisa Bhagavane, Nisa Nisa Mani Bhagavane.
Loving Sai Ram and greetings from Prashanti Nilayam. This is my first broadcast after the recent Indian Ocean tsunami. I know it's a bit late since more than a month has passed after that event, but then I was sort of busy. I apologize for the delay. Anyway, better late than never. And it is but natural that I devote this talk to that subject which has occupied the whole world for almost a month. This tsunami not only struck almost simultaneously in many lands, but also had a longer reach than most natural disasters have had in recent decades. There is no surprise in that because the energy released in the earthquake that triggered the tsunami or killer wave is equal to the explosive energy of 32,000 megaton hydrogen bombs. Now, for your information, 1 megaton bomb is equal to 50 Hiroshima bombs. 50 Hiroshima bombs. Keep that in mind. This means that the energy of the Sumatra earthquake was equal to 1.6 million Hiroshima bombs. 1.6 million Hiroshima bombs. That is mind-boggling, is it not? The energy figure I just quoted is awesome, no doubt. But do you know that natural phenomena have occurred on Earth in which 1 billion times more energy was released compared to what was released in the recent earthquake and tsunami event? For example, hundreds of millions of years ago, there was a huge collision of continents, as a result of which the Himalayas were born. The energy associated with that collision of continents would make the energy of the recent tsunami look like chicken feed. What I am trying to say is that natural phenomena associated with huge release of energy are a part of Earth's history. Does that mean we simply accept the recent tsunami and do not discuss it at all? No. On the contrary, there are points, spiritual points I might add, that we definitely need to focus on. Before I come to that, I must make a brief comment on the role played by the media during the enormous human crisis that followed the natural disaster. As some of you might be aware, I am generally very critical of modern-day media, especially the heavy weightage it gives to publicizing negative matters. In this case, however, it must be said to the credit of the media that it uniformly stirred the collective conscience of humanity, moving it to rapid response and massive support in an incredibly short period of time. With the heart-rending stories filed by the correspondents and the graphic video images projected, even the hardest heart was forced to bleed, at least for a while. To appreciate better the positive role played by the media, I would like to point out that in the 70s of the 20th century, a massive earthquake struck China, resulting in the death of 500,000 people, or something like that. Also, disastrous floods that swept across Bangladesh around the same period took an equally large toll. However, instant television news, providing almost real-time coverage as now, was not available at that time. And that probably is one of the reasons why the world at large did not take notice of those huge calamities. Let me now move on to the spiritual overtones, if I might call it that, starting with the question that many have asked: how can God silently watch all this terrifying devastation and destruction? Why did He not do anything to stop it? This kind of question has been asked any number of times through the ages and has also been answered, but who wants to remember all that? Swept by emotions and shallow perception, people are quick to blame God for events like this, though they hardly ever remember Him when there are good times. For example, when there is a good monsoon here in India, how many people really take a minute off to sincerely thank the Lord? But let the monsoon fail, and instantly people begin to wail and complain about God. Let us examine calmly and dispassionately this question about God being indifferent. Is the Almighty a punishing God or a loving God? The answer is clearly evident from a story that Swami used to narrate in the old days. This story goes something like this. One day, young Krishna was playing along with his friends near the spot where the gopis were drawing water and filling their pots. Yashoda, the foster mother of Krishna, was one among these ladies. Spotting Krishna, she said, "Hey Krishna, come here and help me to place these pots on my head." Krishna just smiled and ran away. Yashoda grumbled and managed to get the pots on her head with the help of other gopis. As she neared her home, she found that Krishna was waiting there. Not just that, without her asking, he spontaneously helped Yashoda to unload the pots. Yashoda was quite surprised and she asked, "Krishna, this is very strange. I asked you then to put the pots on my head, but you did not. On the other hand, I did not ask you for any help now, and yet you are helping. What is the meaning of all this?" Krishna smiled and replied, "I do not place burden on people's heads. I only remove them." What a profound remark. And does that not convey what role God actually plays? By the way, for the benefit of those who are angry with God for not doing anything, let me mention an important fact that emerged recently when intellectuals and religious leaders were discussing the recent tsunami in a TV talk show in America. One participant, a Jewish rabbi, pointed out that every single day about 30,000 children die due to causes that are entirely preventable and that mankind is not doing a damn thing about it. This person then asked, how can we be so quick to condemn God when we are allowing through callousness and sheer indifference 30,000 children to die day after day? I think we had better keep that fact in mind before we start passing judgment about God and His actions. I now wish to turn to natural phenomena and what causes them. Of course, for every event like a typhoon or an earthquake or whatever, there are definite scientific reasons associated with the occurrence of the event concerned. This is an undeniable fact. Nevertheless, it is pertinent to ask, has the event been caused purely by natural factors, or could man have triggered it in any way? This is not a stupid question, and to make my point, let me give a trivial example. Now it's an undeniable fact that all have got to die someday or the other. Some may live to a ripe old age and die a perfectly natural death. On the other hand, a person might become a slave to alcohol and one fine day die of cirrhosis of the liver, much before the time of death due to natural causes. Death thus provides an example of an event that could occur due to either natural causes or man-made triggers. The case of weather provides another example. The climate of the earth has changed markedly thanks to natural processes over millennia and would do so in the future also. On the other hand, during the last 50 years or so, man's actions are threatening to warm up the earth's atmosphere extremely rapidly, causing a lot of the ice in the Arctic and Antarctic to melt. If this continues, in a few short years, much of the polar ice would be gone. In turn, this would lead to a rise in the level of the oceans, which then would drown a large number of countries. It is said, for example, that global warming can cause half of Bangladesh to simply disappear, and this disappearance would have been caused entirely by the selfish actions of modern man. You may say, okay, I agree with all that, but don't tell me that human actions can trigger earthquakes and tsunamis. There is no scientific basis for that. True, I cannot scientifically argue that man can cause earthquakes and tsunamis, but if you allow me to go beyond science to the realm of metaphysics, then such things are indeed possible. Do you feel dazed? Don't worry, I shall try and give the explanation in as simple a language as possible. Let us take ordinary sound. Sound waves really consist of vibrations in air. When a sound wave hits a wall, for example, it produces vibrations in the wall material. And through these material vibrations, the sound wave travels through the wall. When it comes to the other side of the wall, the vibrations in the surface of the wall produce vibrations in air. In this manner, sound, having traveled through the wall, emerges on the other side and propagates further. Just as sound travels through solid matter, it can also travel through liquids like water. In fact, it is via sound waves that whales communicate with each other. Sound waves are waves in the gross or material world. It turns out that there are also waves in the subtle world. These subtle waves can be generated by vibrations in the gross world like the sound waves, or they can be generated entirely in the subtle world. What does that mean? Simple. When we think, our thoughts generate subtle vibrations. These subtle vibrations can travel in the subtle world and interact with other entities they encounter. For example, when I think, my thought waves travel outwards in a subtle manner and they can cause signal in the minds of other persons. As a matter of fact, this happens all the time, but we don't detect these thought waves from others because the minds of most people are desensitized. The minds of yogis, on the other hand, are sharply tuned and they can easily pick the signals from other minds. That is how they are able to read the minds of others. I trust you would be willing to accept all this. Assuming that you do, let me now go one step further. In the world today, there is a lot of negativity. This negativity generates a lot of negative vibrations. The totality of this negativity from individuals adds up to a lot of negativity. Imagine a classroom where all the students are talking loudly. That would fill the whole room with a lot of noise, would it not? Same here. Okay, there is this huge subtle noise associated with the combined negative thoughts and feelings of millions. So what? Well, this macro subtle signal of a negative character generated by all the evil in the world can disturb the subtle state of the earth. Now, the earth is a physical system with a complex inner structure. But it also has a subtle structure, and if that subtle structure gets disturbed, all sorts of things could happen, could it not? I certainly believe that such a thing is possible once one grants subtle forces that operate in the subtle world, etc. In terms of jargon, we are here talking of Chittakasa as opposed to Bhutakasa, which denotes the gross world. Those of you who have carefully followed our series in the Heart to Heart on getting spiritually better should have no difficulty with this jargon. Once you grant that subtle vibrations collectively generated by humans interacts with the subtle state of the earth, then you have also got to admit that the earth is bound to respond to the subtle vibrations received. If humans send good vibrations generated by good thoughts and good actions, then the earth too would respond in a benevolent fashion. But if humans disturb the earth badly, then one fine day its patience would wear out for sure. When that happens, there is an event which is interpreted by us as the wrath of God. The Bible records this and warns man not to sin, but who cares, especially these days when we are so ready to be duped by the devil. The devil, is a very cunning salesman and a past master in offering temptations. The devil tempted Jesus very strongly, but Jesus was firm and followed what Swami always tells us. What does Swami tell us? He says, follow the master, face the devil, fight to the end and finish the game. And that's precisely what Jesus did and finished the game. Swami has mentioned this so many times. Whenever he does, we all clap loudly and even repeat the words after him. But do we follow what he says? If humans want to generate good collective vibrations, then there must be morality in society. And how is this morality in society achieved? Swami has given the answer. He says that it is only when individuals truly love God and mortally fear sin, there would be morality in society. This raises a basic question: what exactly is sin? I would say that sin is any act that would not make God happy, any act that would bring pain to Swami. Once it is defined this way, we just cannot take shelter under what so and so says and so on so forth. The arbiter is our own conscience. If our conscience says, sorry, but Swami is not going to like what you do, then that is a sinful act for sure. Any act that is intended to promote our selfishness, hurt others, and so on is, however much we might argue to the contrary, a sinful fact. This leads me to a quartet of words that Swami used again and again a couple of years ago. I have mentioned these words in some of my earlier broadcasts, but I have to repeat them once again. These words are Vyashti, Samashti, Srishti, and Parameshti, meaning respectively individual, society, nature, and God. Swami has pointed out that man is a limb of society, society is a limb of nature, and nature in turn is a limb of God. What it all means is that when man acts, he must take special care to see that his actions in no way harm society or disturb nature. It is actions of this kind alone that are pleasing to God and would help one to earn His grace. Obviously, sinful acts would never please God. So I hope the relationship between individual morality, and collective good vibrations on the one hand, and the benevolent response of the earth on the other is clear. To put it simply, if we disturb the earth, then the earth is bound to punish us. We can disturb the earth through direct physical pollution of air, water, etc., or we can pollute in a subtle way through bad thoughts, evil actions, etc. Either way, there is a huge price to pay. As far as immorality in society is concerned, you do not have to take my word for it. Just pause for a minute and reflect. If you do, then you would painfully realize that in the name of business and money making, people are doing all sorts of terrible things, from peddling arms that promote horrible violence to drug trafficking and running a massive trillion-dollar industry devoted exclusively to sense gratification. Add to that pollution of air, water, and land, and we have a time bomb that is ticking. When the bomb goes off, we are shocked, but that is because we have been ostrich-like. This tendency to indulge heavily in adharma, oblivious to the consequences, is nothing new. In fact, in the Indian scriptures, there are grim pictures of what would happen in the Kali age. But it seems that what has been predicted looks like a picnic compared to what is actually happening today. Keeping all this in view, in one discourse, Swami gave an allegorical interpretation of the Ramayana. Bhagavan said that Rama represents Paramatma, the omnipresent God, while Sita, the consort of Rama, represents Prakriti or nature. Ravana symbolizes man who tries to appropriate nature thinking it belongs to him. Not true. Prakriti, as Swami emphatically declared, belongs to Paramatma, and nature is man's universal mother. Man must respectfully bow to nature and pray to her for bounties. When man does this, nature would respond with love, giving man everything that he asks for, within limits of course. Can one truthfully say that man today is respectful toward nature? And if disaster occurs, who is to blame? Man or God? On another occasion, Swami said that after creating everything including man, God said to man, "Son, all this is for you to benefit from and enjoy. But you must draw upon these bounties within limits and with humility. If you fail to do that, then there can be serious consequences." And that precisely is what is happening now. Have we not heard time and again people talking of exploiting resources under the sea, resources in Antarctica and on the moon? So you see, Swami has been warning us all the time, but we do not pause to pay serious attention. Whose fault is it? This takes me quite naturally to something else that Bhagwan often says. He says, love for God and fear of sin alone can promote morality in society. Love is a powerful force that can help people to overcome desires. Let us say there is a poor man who is addicted to liquor. This is a very common thing in India. This fellow drinks away all his earnings, leaving very little for the family. Often, men beat their wives to snatch away whatever little these women might have earned through manual labor. One fine day, this man's child becomes very sick. The child urgently needs medical attention, and such attention cannot be got without paying the doctor's fees. So what does the man do? His feeling of love for his child overpowers him and makes him forget alcohol. And using the money that he formerly used to spend on drinks, he now gets medical attention for his dear child, and the child is saved. By the way, this is something that happens quite often in India. Now there is this man, a slave to liquor, but his love for his child helps him to get out of that slavery. In other words, desires that we normally regard as impossible to overcome can be overcome if we decide to give up that habit as a token of our love for Swami. Have we not heard Swami say so many times, I don't want your gifts, just offer me your bad habits. You know, God really means that. It would do us a lot of good to take him seriously. One question that some people tend to raise is the following. Every action has a consequence. If thousands of people perished and millions are suffering, they are just paying for their past. We should not interfere with the law of karma and must allow it to play out. I have a simple answer to this kind of argument. Just recall what happened after the Gujarat earthquake. Swami sent a huge convoy of trucks carrying tents, stoves, kerosene, provisions, cooking oil, blankets, clothes, etc., etc. Much earlier to that, when some of the coastal districts of Andhra were devastated by a terrifying cyclone, Swami sent volunteers to clean up the mess and provide all possible assistance to the cyclone victims. Kasturi has given a moving and inspiring account of this, and this is a must reading for all of us at the present time. And sure enough, after the recent tsunami, Swami once again sent a lot of relief material. The Lord's message is loud and clear. You have no business to judge about others' karma. When someone is suffering and is in distress, it is your bounden duty to render assistance. I hope that settles it. Before I conclude, there is one more question I must deal with. It relates to why the poor are seemingly singled out for punishment and how come the rich who sin more get away with it. This question has been asked many times, including to me by my students. In raising such questions, we should be extremely careful. How do we know and how do we decide who has sinned to what extent? Also, is it not said that the law of reflection, reaction, resound has its own time constant, meaning that retribution will come when it has to and not when we think it should? Some people sin and instantly face the consequences, while others face the music in later births. That's the way it is, and we all know it. That being the case, I fail to understand how devotees who keep telling Swami that he is God and the embodiment of compassion, etc., also make these accusations. Does it mean that they think God and Swami are distinct entities? I mention all this not to find fault with anyone, but just to remind ourselves that most of us spend more time in judging God than in seriously studying what he has been saying all these years. If people study the teachings of Swami seriously, there should be no room for such doubts and questions. I find it amazing how people meticulously copy the thought for the day, make greetings card out of it and so on, but fail to observe the content of these messages of Bhagavan. My submission is that it is about time we take God more seriously and go beyond the trivial and demonstrative aspects of devotion that we seem to be content with. And let us not forget what Swami says about suffering. Even suffering is for our good. Remember that it is anguish that made Arjuna finally see Krishna as the Lord and surrender to him. Misery, as Swami says, is a good friend, though we might not think so. Just look up Gita Vahini and you will find out that what I am saying is true. In a nutshell, let us stop blaming God when there are innumerable faults in us. Maybe I should mention in passing that when the Lord incarnated as Rama, he personally underwent hardship that he was not obliged to. And when God came in human form as Krishna, who was it that had a good time? Was it the bad guys, Kauravas, or the good guys, the Pandavas? But then, what happened in the end? God was with the Pandavas in the hour of deepest crisis, while all the Kauravas perished. To cap it all, what about our own Swami? Can we afford to easily forget how he had to undergo physical torture when he was taken to an exorcist for driving out the evil spirits that were supposed to have taken refuge in him? And finally, what about Jesus? You see, God's drama is immensely complex and we should not try to analyze it. We should instead focus on playing the role allotted to us as best as we can. And that is greatly facilitated if we stick firmly to the path of Dharma. Perhaps it is also pertinent to narrate a small but most important incident that happened recently. A small group of people sent a message to Swami seeking his blessings to go to Tamil Nadu and do service in the tsunami affected regions. Swami told the person who conveyed the request something simple but profound. In effect, what he said was the following: there is no need for these people to go to Tamil Nadu. Already hundreds of volunteers trained in disaster management are at the site. If inexperienced people go, they might even come in the way. It is better for these people to silently pray to God to prevent such disasters in the future. Not many pray in that matter, and offering such prayers to the Almighty would therefore be the best service they can render. That says a lot, does it not? I mean, we all routinely chant Loka, Samasta, Sukhino Bhavantu and all that after bhajans. But do we really feel that way in our hearts? Kabir once said, Dukh mein sab sumiran kare, sukh mein kare na koi. Jo sukh mein sumiran kare, dukh kahe hoi. The meaning of this is as follows: everyone prays when in distress, but none pray when things are fine. If people pray when they have no problems, would sorrow and misery have a chance? Yes, of course, we must have a tsunami warning system and all that. But in the ultimate analysis, is not, as Kabir says so beautifully, prevention better than cure? Think about it. Jai Sai Ram.